The twin moons of Virel 6 glowed softly in the sky, casting a silver light over the quiet palace gardens. Among the tall blue grass and glowing crystal trees sat Princess Asera, the youngest daughter of the Vailari royal family. Her pale violet skin shimmered slightly under the moons, but her eyes remained fixed on the stars. She often watched the sky, wondering what life was like beyond her lonely world. Asera was not like the other Vailari. Her legs were weak, and her arms trembled when she moved. Born with a rare genetic condition, she couldn't fly like the others using telekinetic wings. Worse, she could not speak through telepathy, the natural language of her people. Her mind was bright, filled with thoughts and dreams, but no one ever heard them. Among the Vailari, communication was silent and powerful. They shared thoughts, memories, and even emotions through mind-to-mind contact. Asera could hear others, but she couldn't reply. She was like a window that could see the world, but could never open. From birth, the court whispered about her. The broken princess. The silent heir. Even though her parents loved her, they slowly distanced themselves, ashamed of what others might say. When she was a child, other young nobles visited the palace. At first, they were curious about her. But when they realized she could not join their telepathic games or fly through the sky gardens, they stopped coming. Now, Asera was 22 cycles old and alone. She lived in a quiet palace far from the capital. Her rooms were beautiful with crystal windows and floating lights, but it still felt like a cage. Nurses came and went, helping her dress, feeding her, and caring for her health. But none of them stayed for long. They treated her kindly, but never like a real person. One day, she overheard the guard speaking outside her window. "They're looking for a suitor again," one said. "For the princess?" the other replied. "That's hopeless. No one would want to mate with her, not with her condition. Still, the king hopes someone will agree, maybe from another species." Asera closed her eyes. Her heart ached. She didn't want pity. She didn't want to be someone's burden. She just wanted to be seen for who she really was. Far across the galaxy, Earth had recently joined the Galactic Assembly. The human colonies were still considered a young species, physically weaker, less advanced in technology, and loud in their emotions. But they were spreading fast and making connections. Captain Elias Thorne was one of Earth's first official envoys. Calm, strong-willed, and trained in diplomacy, he had visited 4 alien worlds already. His next stop was the Vailari capital, to speak about trade, peace, and cultural exchange. The Vailari viewed humans with polite interest. Many found them strange, too emotional, too physical. They spoke out loud, showed feelings on their faces, and touched everything. When Elias arrived at the palace, he greeted the council with a warm smile and a deep bow. He was careful with his words, honest in his questions, and surprisingly respectful of Vailari ways. During a formal dinner, he noticed something strange. "May I ask," Elias said to one of the counselors, "is it true there is a princess who lives on the moon of Virel 6? The room went silent. The elder counselor gave a tight smile. "She is not an active member of the court." "I see," Elias replied softly. He did not press. But later, in private, he asked his assistant to find records about her. He read everything. A rare genetic condition. Limited movement. No. Telepathy. No suitor. Isolated from public life. He looked at a picture. She was sitting under a flowering tree, eyes looking up. She didn't look broken to him. She looked lonely. 2 days later, Elias requested a visit to the moon of Virel 6, offering a diplomatic gift to the royal family. The request surprised the council. "There is nothing of interest there," they said, but they allowed him to go. Asera was in her garden again, her hover chair floating gently above the ground. Her nurse informed her of a visitor, a human envoy. She blinked in surprise. No one visited her. Elias arrived wearing a dark diplomatic suit, his eyes calm and kind. He walked slowly toward her, not rushing, not staring. He bowed. "Princess Asera," he said, his voice gentle. "It is an honor." She stared at him. She could hear his words through her translator device. No one had spoken to her with such respect in years. "I brought a gift," he said, holding out a small device. "It's a human language tool. It helps people who cannot speak or hear to express themselves. Maybe it can help us talk." Her fingers trembled as she reached out. With her nurse's help, she held the device and pressed one button. A robotic voice spoke in soft tones. "Thank you." Elias smiled, and for the first time in many years, Asera smiled too. The sun of Virel 6 rose slowly over the palace gardens, casting golden light on the soft blue grass and silver-leaved trees. Princess Asera sat by the fountain, holding the small voice device Elias had given her. She had barely slept all night. No one had ever given her a gift like this before. No one had spoken to her with such kindness and patience. And no one, until now, had asked her how she felt. The device was simple but powerful. It had a round screen with large buttons and a soft voice that spoke her typed words. It wasn't perfect, but it gave her something she had never truly had before: a voice. Elias returned the next day. This time he brought a small metal box. "What is that?" she asked through the device. "It's a gift from Earth," he replied. "A learning tool. It teaches language through sight and sound. I thought we could learn from each other." He placed the box between them. The screen lit up, showing symbols from both Earth's languages and Velari writing. Elias touched one of the symbols, and it spoke in his voice. "Friend," he said, smiling. Asera pressed the Velari word for the same. The device echoed softly. "Friend." That word stayed in her heart. Days turned into weeks. Elias continued, visiting Asera every afternoon. They sat in the gardens, beneath the floating lantern flowers, learning each other's words and sharing stories. Asera told him about Velari history, the old dynasties, the crystal cities, the great sky wars. Elias told her about Earth, its green forests, loud oceans, and its many different people. He spoke with emotion, using his hands and face to show joy, sadness, or surprise. At first, Asera found it strange. Her people hid emotions, but soon she began to enjoy it. His emotions made the stories feel alive. One evening she asked him, "Why are you so different from others?" Elias thought for a moment. "Humans are not perfect. We can be loud, messy, even foolish. But we care deeply. We love, we cry, we fight for what we believe in. Maybe that's what makes us special." Asera looked at him for a long time. Then with trembling hands she typed, "You are the only one who asked to see me." He didn't reply with words. He simply bowed his head in respect. Not everyone was pleased. In the Velari capital, members of the royal council began whispering. "The human envoy is spending too much time with her. He is disturbing the balance. She is not part of official matters. This is not proper." But the king, though concerned, said nothing. Part of him was surprised. Another part, afraid. Could a human truly care for his daughter, or was this only diplomacy? Still, he allowed the meetings to continue. Back on the moon, a gentle change was taking place. Elias brought a small garden box filled with earth flowers. "These are called sun blooms," he explained. "They grow toward warmth. I thought maybe they'd like your garden." Asera watched as he planted them beside her chair. She reached out to touch a flower, its yellow petals soft beneath her fingers. "It's beautiful," she typed. "So are you," Elias said quietly. Asera's fingers stopped moving. No one had ever said that to her before. They laughed more now. Sometimes Asera would tease Elias about how humans needed to sleep so much. He would joke about Vailari foods being too shiny to eat. She began practicing simple spoken words, her voice weak but growing stronger through the translator. Li, as, she said one day. He looked up in surprise. You said my name. She smiled, proud of herself. He gently placed his hand over his heart and whispered, Thank you. One evening, as stars filled the sky, Asera turned her chair toward Elias. She took a deep breath and typed something she had never dared to say before. Do you think someone like me can be loved? Elias did not answer right away. He looked up at the stars, then at her. I think love is not about perfect bodies or powers, he said softly. It's about hearts that understand each other. You are strong, wise, and full of light. Anyone who sees that can love you. Asera looked away, tears forming in her eyes. But she didn't cry out of sadness. They were tears of hope. That night, Elias sat in his quarters, thinking deeply. He had traveled across stars, spoken to leaders, and seen many wonders. But none of it had touched him the way Asera had. Her courage, her mind, her silent strength. She had lived her whole life unseen. And yet she smiled, she learned, she gave. He wrote a message to the Human Council asking for extended stay. A few days later, while walking together in the palace garden, Elias stopped beside the crystal fountain. He turned to Asera, his expression serious but gentle. I have something to ask you, he said. She tilted her head slightly. He took a breath. This may sound strange, but I mean it with all my heart. He knelt. Will you mate with me? Asera froze. Her eyes widened. Her fingers trembled as she reached for the device. She paused, then slowly typed. Why me? Elias smiled. Because you are not just the forgotten princess. You are the strongest person I've ever met. And I want to stand beside you, not out of pity, but out of love. She looked at him for a long moment. Then, slowly, she typed, Yes. The fountain shimmered behind them. The garden lights swayed in the wind. And for the first time, Princess Asera's future felt bright. Princess Asera sat in her hover chair under the same flowering tree where she had first met Elias. The garden felt different now, brighter, more alive. Birds sang softly and the petals danced in the breeze. But the biggest change was inside her. She felt seen. She felt real. She held the voice device in her lap, pressing a message slowly. Are you sure about this? Elias sat across from her on a smooth stone bench, leaning forward slightly. He looked at her with calm, warm eyes. Yes, he said. I've never been more sure. Asera still couldn't believe it. For so long, people looked past her, as if her broken body made her invisible. Now here was someone who didn't just look at her. He truly saw her, and he had asked for her, not out of duty, not because of politics, but from the heart. Still, fear lingered inside her. You are a human envoy, her voice device spoke as she typed. Won't this damage your position? Elias gave a soft smile. Maybe. But what's the point of a title if I don't stand for what I believe in? She lowered her eyes, touched by his words. Word of the human's proposal spread fast across the royal court. Many were shocked. Some were angry. In the Vailari High Council chamber, leaders debated the news. This is unacceptable, one elder snapped. The human is violating our customs. She is unfit for bonding, another counselor added coldly. This will shame the royal bloodline. But he asked with respect, one younger voice said. And she accepted. Does that mean nothing? Silence followed. Then the high speaker, an old and wise Vailari with glowing silver skin, raised his hand. We cannot ignore this matter, he said. A tribunal must be held. Back on Varel 6, Elias and Asera received the message. "You are called to appear before the High Council," the royal messenger announced. "Your bond must be judged." Asera's heart sank. She had feared this day would come. She looked at Elias with worried eyes. "We don't have to go," she said through her device. Elias reached out and gently touched her hand. "Yes, we do," he said, "not to prove them wrong, but to prove you matter." The journey to the capital was quiet. Asera sat beside Elias in the ship's chamber, looking out the window. The stars felt colder this time. When they landed, guards escorted them to the royal city, crystal towers, glowing bridges, and crowds whispering as they passed. Asera kept her eyes forward. She was afraid, but also proud. She had come far from the silent girl in the garden. Inside the grand chamber of the High Council, many noble families watched from above. The king and queen sat in silence, their faces unreadable. The High Speaker addressed the hall. "We gather to judge the request of bonding between a human envoy and Princess Asera." A low murmur filled the room. One counselor stood. "The princess is damaged. She cannot fly, she cannot speak telepathically, and she cannot lead. This proposal is based on pity." Asera's hands tightened on her chair. Her heart beat fast. Elias stood slowly. "I ask permission to speak," he said. The High Speaker nodded. Elias stepped forward and spoke clearly. "Princess Asera is not damaged. She is strong, intelligent, and more courageous than any leader I've met. On Earth, we do not measure worth by ability alone. We value heart, and Asera has the strongest heart of anyone I know." Some nobles laughed quietly, others listened. He continued, "She taught me more about patience, hope, and honor than any teacher. I came here as an envoy, but I stand here as someone who has learned from your people, especially from her." Elias reached into his coat and placed a small data pad on the center table. "These are my official reports. Records of Asera's writings, her historical knowledge, and her ideas for cross-species education. She is not just capable, she is exceptional." The council was silent. Then, to everyone's surprise, Asera pressed her voice device and rolled forward. "Let me speak." Gasps echoed through the room. The princess, silent for so long, had chosen to speak in front of all. She continued, pressing slowly, "All my life you called me broken, but I feel no shame. I feel pain when I am ignored, when I am unseen. Elias saw me, not as weak, but as someone worth listening to. If I am not fit to bond, then what does that say about your idea of worth?" The chamber remained frozen, in silence. Then the king stood. He walked down from the throne, slowly, eyes on his daughter. When he reached her, he placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "My daughter," he said quietly, "I failed to see you. Forgive me." Asera looked up, surprised. Her eyes filled with tears. The king turned to the council. "Let the tribunal vote." The vote was long. There was debate. Fear of breaking tradition battled with hope for a new path. Finally, the High Speaker stood. "The tribunal finds no law to deny this bond," he said. "Let the union proceed." Cheers broke out among the younger nobles. Others remained silent, but did not object. Asera looked at Elias, and for the first time, she felt light, as if her body didn't matter anymore. Elias bowed deeply to her and whispered, "You were never broken." That night, under the twin moons of the capital, a quiet ceremony was held in the Crystal Garden. There were no grand parades or loud songs, just close friends, curious diplomats, and a few brave nobles who believed in change. Asera wore a simple silver robe. Elias stood beside her in his Earth uniform. They placed their hands on the bond stone, and their names were entered into the royal record. Princess Asera was no longer the forgotten daughter. She was the first royal to bond with a human. And together, they would change more than just tradition. They would change the stars. The news of Princess Asera and Captain Elias Thorne's bond spread quickly across the Vailari dominion. Some whispered with hope, others with fear. The old traditions had been shaken, and many eyes watched the couple closely. Back on the moon of Varel 6, Asera and Elias found themselves spending more time together. The bond they shared was not just political, it was growing into something deeper, a true partnership built on respect and trust. One morning, as golden light spilled over the blue grass, Elias brought a small handcrafted box. He carried it carefully as if it held something precious. Asera looked at him curiously. "What is this?" she asked through her voice device. Elias smiled softly. "It is a gift from my home, Earth. Something old, but important." He opened the box to reveal a simple ring made of a shining metal that caught the light. "On Earth," Elias explained, "we give this ring to show our promise to another person. It is a sign of love, trust, and commitment." Asera studied the ring, feeling the weight of its meaning. "You want to make this promise with me?" she asked, her voice trembling. Elias nodded. "Yes, but only if you want it too." For a moment, Asera hesitated. The memory of the council's judgment, the whispers of the court, and the weight of expectation pressed on her heart. Yet, when she looked at Elias, she saw courage and kindness shining back. She took the ring gently in her hand. "Yes," she said simply. In the weeks that followed, preparations began for the official bonding ceremony, a rare event in Vailari history. The palace was alive with activity. Crystal decorators polished their work. Soft music filled the halls, and noble families made quiet plans to attend. Yet, not all were happy. Some council members met in secret, fearing this union might bring change they did not want. "This will weaken the Vailari bloodline," one whispered sharply. "Humans are unpredictable," another agreed. "This could bring disaster." But their voices were quiet compared to the growing support among the younger nobles and diplomats from other worlds. Many saw Asera and Elias's bond as a symbol of hope, proof that strength was not only in power, but also in understanding and love. On the day of the ceremony, the skies over the capital were clear, and the twin moons shone brightly as night approached. Asera sat in her hover chair in the crystal garden, surrounded by glowing lanterns and the soft hum of excited voices. Elias stood nearby, dressed in his formal Earth uniform. His eyes met hers, full of warmth and promise. The High Speaker approached, holding an ancient scroll that detailed the rites of bonding. His voice was calm and strong as he spoke. The old words in Vailari, Asera and Elias, placed their hands on the bond stone, a smooth, glowing crystal that symbolized unity and strength. One by one, their friends and supporters stepped forward to offer blessings. The human diplomats shared songs from Earth, and the Vailari nobles recited poems of courage and honor. Though different, the ceremony blended their worlds, a new tradition born from respect and love. After the formal words, Elias reached into his coat and pulled out the small ring again. He looked at Asera, his voice steady. "With this ring," he said, "I promise to stand by you, to protect you and to love you, no matter the stars or storms we face." Asera's fingers shook as Elias gently slid the ring onto her hand. She smiled, a true, bright smile that lit the garden. "And I," she responded through her voice device, "promise to share my strength and heart with you, to be your partner in all things." The crowd erupted in soft applause, and for the first time, many saw not a disabled princess, but a strong woman, a leader, and a symbol of change. The ceremony marked the beginning of a new chapter, but challenges remained. The Vailari Council had accepted the union, but many families still whispered behind closed doors. Old fears died slowly, and some nobles planned to test Elias's loyalty. Meanwhile, Asera faced her own struggles. Her body was still weak, and she relied on technology and help. She worried about being a burden. Elias noticed her doubts. "Your strength is not in your legs," he told her one evening as they watched the stars. "It is in your mind, your heart, and your will. That is what matters." She looked at him and nodded. "You see me," she said softly, "the real me." "That is because I know you," Elias replied. "Not as a princess, but as a person." With their bond official, Elias worked to improve communication between their people. Together, they proposed new projects: medical research to help disabled Vailari, cultural exchanges to build understanding, and education programs to break down old prejudices. Slowly, the Vailari began to change. Where once there was fear and rejection, now there was curiosity and hope, and in the middle of it all stood Asera and Elias, proof that love and courage could cross even the widest stars. The days after the bonding ceremony were filled with both hope and tension. While many celebrated the union of Princess Asera and Captain Elias Thorne, others in the Vailari Dominion's ruling class could not accept this change. They saw it as a challenge to their traditions, their power, and the very identity of their people. One morning, a message arrived from the Vailari High Council. It requested that Asera and Elias appear before the tribunal again. This time, the council wished to discuss the future of the princess and the implications of her bond with a human. Asera sat quietly in her chamber, the soft hum of the palace around her. She pressed her fingers against the armrest of her hover chair, feeling the familiar vibrations. Elias stood beside her, calm but determined. "We will face them together," he said. "No matter what happens, I am with you." Asera nodded, finding strength in his words. The tribunal was held in the grand hall of the Vailari capital. The chamber was vast, with high crystal ceilings that reflected light in shimmering colors. Nobles and officials filled the seats, their faces showing a mix of curiosity, skepticism, and concern. The High Speaker, with his glowing silver skin and calm voice, opened the session. "We meet again to consider the future of Princess Asera and her bond with Captain Elias Thorne," he said. "This union is unlike any before, and it raises questions we must answer for the good of our people." One counselor, stern and sharp-eyed, spoke first. "Princess Asera is disabled. She cannot lead, cannot fully participate in Vailari society as expected. Her bond with a human, an outsider, may weaken our lineage and threaten our strength." Murmurs of agreement echoed around the hall. Another voice rose. "We must consider if this union will bring discord among our allies and families. Are we ready to accept such change?" Elias stepped forward, his expression steady. "I ask permission to speak." The High Speaker nodded. "I have traveled many worlds," Elias began, "and I have learned that strength comes in many forms. Princess Asera's mind and spirit are powerful. Her wisdom and courage inspire those around her." He paused, looking at the council. "We humans value more than physical perfection. We value heart, intelligence, and the will to overcome challenges. Princess Asera is a true leader in this regard." Elias held up a small data pad. "These documents show her ideas for education, diplomacy, and healing. She is not only capable, but ready to guide her people into a new future." Sarah felt a quiet confidence growing inside her. She had heard the doubts and fears, but Elias's words gave her courage. Then, with trembling fingers, she activated her voice device. "I speak now," she said softly, her synthesized voice filling the chamber. The room fell silent. For years, I lived unseen. I was judged by what I could not do, rather than what I could. I am more than my body. I am more than my silence. Captain Elias Thorne sees me, not as weak, but as strong. She looked at the council members. If you deny this bond, you deny the future. You deny hope. Is that the legacy you wish to leave? The chamber remained quiet. The words had touched many, even those who wished to resist. The king, who had sat quietly throughout the session, rose slowly. His face was soft, but firm. "My daughter," he said, stepping forward, "you have shown great strength. You have taught me and our people that true power lies not in perfection, but in heart and spirit." He turned to the council. "The future of the Vailari will be shaped by courage and understanding. I support the bond of Princess Sarah and Captain Elias Thorne." The council then voted. The decision was close, but the majority agreed to accept the union fully. Cheering broke out among the younger nobles and diplomats. Some older council members grumbled but did not oppose openly. Sarah smiled, relief flooding her. Elias reached out and took her hand. "We did it," he said softly. She nodded. Together, in the weeks that followed, Asera and Elias worked hard to prove that their bond was a strength, not a weakness. They visited schools and communities, sharing stories of hope and resilience. They supported new medical programs to help other disabled. Vailari live better lives, and they encouraged open conversations about acceptance and change. Slowly, the Vailari people began to embrace a new way of thinking, one where differences were valued and unity was built on respect. One evening, as they watched the twin moons rise over the city, Elias spoke. "The road ahead will not be easy. Some will still resist." Sarah nodded. "But we have each other, and we have a chance to build something better." Elias smiled. "Yes, together we will change the stars." The days after the tribunal's decision felt like the dawn of a new era. The people of the Vailari Dominion were watching closely, waiting to see what the future held for Princess Sarah and Captain Elias Thorne. On Varel 6, the moon where Sarah had spent most of her life, a small group gathered for a quiet celebration. Friends from different worlds came together. Humans, Vailari reformers, and diplomats who believed in change. The crystal garden was filled with soft lights and gentle music. The air smelled sweet from the blooming flowers. Sarah sat in her hover chair, the ring on her finger shining softly. Elias stood beside her, his hand resting gently on hers. Neither was dressed in the royal finery of old tradition. Instead, they wore simple clothes that reflected their shared journey. Humble, honest, and full of hope. "This is just the beginning," Elias said, his voice calm but full of promise. Sarah nodded, her eyes bright. "Together we will make our people see." In the weeks that followed, their bond became a symbol of courage and change throughout the Dominion. Sarah traveled beyond the palace walls, visiting villages and schools, speaking to those who once ignored her. Her message was simple but powerful. Everyone deserves to be seen and valued, no matter their body or ability. Strength came in many forms, and true leadership was about heart and wisdom, not perfection. Many Vailari began to rethink their traditions. They started programs to help those with disabilities and opened schools for mixed-species education. The once quiet moon of Varel 6 became a center of learning and hope. But change did not come without challenges. Some older nobles still resisted. Secret meetings were held to question the bond and the future it promised. Rumors spread that Elias was only using the princess for political gain, or worse, that he might betray the Vailari. Asera faced these challenges with grace. When whispers reached her ears, she did not hide. Instead, she spoke openly about her bond and her love for Elias. "I'm not a prize or a symbol," she said at a gathering. "I am a person with dreams and choices. Elias chose me because he sees me, not because of duty, but because of love." Her words echoed across the room, breaking old fears and opening new hearts. Elias, too, worked tirelessly to build trust between their peoples. He organized cultural exchanges where humans and Vailari shared music, art, and stories. He helped start a medical research center that focused on improving care for disabled Vailari. Together, they built bridges, not just between two individuals, but between entire worlds. One night, under the light of the twin moons, Elias and Asera stood on a balcony overlooking the city. The stars glittered above, endless and mysterious. Elias took Asera's hand. "Do you remember the day I first asked you?" he asked softly. She smiled. "How could I forget? I was so afraid." He laughed quietly. "But you said yes." "Yes," she said. "Because you saw me, the real me." They stood silently for a moment, feeling the gentle night breeze. "Do you think the galaxy will ever accept us?" Asera asked. Elias looked at her with steady eyes. "They will have to. Because we will show them that love and courage are stronger than fear." Time passed, and their story spread beyond the Vailari dominion. Other species began to ask questions about acceptance, about breaking down barriers. Asera and Elias were invited to speak at interstellar gatherings. Their message was clear: diversity is strength. Compassion is power. The future belongs to those who open their hearts. Years later, when the Vailari Empire faced new challenges, from political rivals to natural disasters, it was Asera's vision and Elias's determination that guided their people through. Together, they proved that true leadership was not about being perfect, but about being brave enough to be different and strong enough to stand together. And so, the disabled princess and the human envoy changed not just their own worlds, but the stars themselves. Their bond became a legend, not of power or conquest, but of hope, love, and the courage to see each other truly.